fantastic. I really, really like Bethel. However, I think Bethel, and I may have said this last month, Bethel appeals to very discipled Christians who want a deeper experience of the Holy Spirit, at least among my friends who've connected to Bethel. I think Bethel has a theology, from what little I know, so I might well be speaking out of turn, has a theology which would fit in the spirit of your graphic, Marlon. I think the theology that I understand from Bethel is that if really discipled Christians get deeper into the Holy Spirit, pray into things more, see more healings, and become more holy, the rest of the world will come to Jesus. That's the approach to revival. Figuring out how to have a transparent, which I think we talked about last time, faith in Jesus with some power to it that is inviting immediately to anybody is worth thinking about. So what I'll be talking about today, presumably we don't just chat about questions, is a bit about what the phrase I put is, what's our product? What are we offering anybody, including ourselves? I think for Bethel, the product really isn't for your friend who's not a churchgoer. It's not that Bethel would not want to see that person, but what they would say is, well, if they need healing, bring them in, we'll pray for them. That'll show them the power of God. But for most of the people I've met, maybe it's even a stage theory question as I think about it. I don't know if you recall our stage theory conversation last time. Most Christian ministries that I'm familiar with assume the world is one of two things. Either stage one, chaotic, their life's in shambles, or stage two, we now have the truth, we have the rules, we have the kind of the rules, I suppose, of faith. They don't even assume there is a stage three or stage four. In my experience, people kind of in a more traditionalist Christian evangelistic model assume there's only a stage one or a stage two. So as they're praying for the world, they're praying for people whose lives are in chaos, who, you know, and if anyone is a Christian, for instance, who seems to disagree with them, they assume the only reason to disagree with them is because the Christian is sneaky and hiding something and not honest, and there's sin in their lives. In other words, that anyone who disagrees with them has to be stage one. In the world that I'm talking to, and in Ann Arbor, this came up a lot, almost everyone people deals with is stage three. Their lives are not an open chaos. They're functional people. They have lovely things to contribute to the world themselves. And so I think, back to your Bethel question, I can envision that saying to somebody like that, come to Bethel, they'll pray with great power, and get your problem solved. That's an approach that would more serve if their life was an open chaos, if they were just at the end of their rope, and would have less to offer for most of the people I interact with. Not that they would never have problems, but that wouldn't be their presenting symptom. And so I think that's, when I'm saying prayer could be bad, it's not that prayer is ever bad, and I'm grateful for every prayer meeting Bethel or anyone else ever does. I believe God hears those prayers. But it can create a culture which is us-them, which is the serious discipled Christians who are really praying seriously and the rest of the world. And a lot of what we're going to be talking about here is how to break down those barriers rather than reinforce those barriers. What are you trying or hoping to offer people? If there's the prospect of this beautiful Franciscan revival that I pitched in this essay that Marlon sent you, I have a feeling for why the kind of perspective on faith that I've suggested to you today would tend towards that Franciscan revival rather than tend towards what I've called a holiness revival. Maybe we could chat about, maybe I could tease out of maybe, does that make sense to you? Why those would be different models? And I hope what I communicated in that essay is not that the holiness model is false. I think it's true. I believe all those revival stories I believe in. They just tend to be short-lived, and they tend to leave a bad after effect once they're gone. One tends to be much more ongoing and keeps inviting the entire world into the experience over generations. As if everyone can experience it, it's good, you're going to like it when you get it. The other one tends to figure out who are the bad guys and who are the good guys, and loudly proclaim what makes you a godly person and what doesn't, and loudly proclaims you need to do the godly stuff to get the good stuff. And that tends to divide society into the secular world and the church-going world in a way that, in my experience, it ultimately is destructive. And I think the key difference is God good to you today? Is it possible for you to know God in such an encouraging way that, like my friend Jessica, who said, I will never be an evangelist, she just knew that God, and she, of course, would tell her friends about that. But to her, that was not evangelism. most of the churches I know that have thrived in very secular settings have gotten a hold of this. Most of them, strangely enough, have a strong aversion to evangelism because they think it's tactical. They think it's us, them. And they think in the end it's the bad sort of revival. And yet they grow like crazy with people who aren't followers of Jesus and aren't churchgoers joining in with them. And so you think it's paradoxical. Part of it says, well, yes, but they're doing evangelism. It's just putting a different word to it. But if you actually talk to them, they'll dispute that. And they'll say, it is not evangelism. It's finding a good God ourselves and tearing down barriers that keeps that from being available to all our friends, even as we receive back from them. And suddenly, many, many of them want what we have, and then we're all doing it together, and it's a beautiful thing.